Good afternoon. Really happy to have you here today. My name is Fran Frazier. I am a member of the Education Committee, Friends of the Community Relations Commission, and part of the City Department of Neighborhoods. So we're really happy to be with you today. Before I begin, I asked Gail Gray, she's the staff person who makes all these things happen, are there any special people that I needed to call out first? And then she said, well, you know, everybody here is special. So I just want to do a shout out to all of you then. And thank you for being here. I do want to thank our education chair, Allison Poirier. Where is Allison? We're a small committee, but a mighty committee. I also would like to thank Commissioner Nancy Payan for being here. Nancy, are you? There you go. Thank you. And I also want to thank Napoleon Bell, former director of the Commission on Community Relations for the city, now with the Sheriff's Office. And I would also like to thank former State Representative Larry Price for being with us as well. Who else did Gail want me to thank? Sid Gross isn't here, but Sid is the chair of the Friends of the Community Relations Commission, and they do a lot to help our Lunch and Learn series. So now I think we're really ready to start. So I want to welcome you to the second in a series of discussions and information on healing the hurt in our community. Now, this topic came about in an effort to provide a public forum in which community hurt could be discussed openly, while providing resources and opportunities for real community engagement. So we're very happy that so many of you are with us today. The purpose of this series, we're defining hurt as physical, mental, emotional, and probably spiritual pain and anguish. So one of the goals of this series is to share experiences, opportunities, and efforts that exist in our cities when people are hurting and learning how to deal with the hurt. So as you attend these series, this is the second, as you attend the rest of our series, I would encourage you to think about, explore, share how you are learning to deal with hurt that you may have. On the table is a piece of cloth, and when you leave today, we would love for you to think about what have you learned from healing your own hurt, and to write that down. At the very end, at our last session, that session will really be designed to kind of honor what we are going through and how we have built resiliency. So I would encourage you to come back. So now we're going to talk about strategies for learning to heal the hurt. In our city are programs and efforts that minister to people in pain, children as well as adults. Programs that offer caring, skills and tools, resources and access, all created to help those who hurt to learn how to heal. Allie and Gail and I have put together what we think is really a great panel to address some of these issues around strategies, but also to share with you incredible work that people are doing in our community. So, hello, panelists. What I'd like for you to do is to introduce yourselves, and I want you to share a short story on what drew you to the work that you are currently doing. Okay? So, Bob, you want to start?
No. No, my name is Bob. Can everybody hear me? My name is Bob Pullen, and I'm with Parents of Murdered Children. Kind of self-explanatory. We had a nephew. My wife and I had a nephew that was murdered 16 years ago, and it's just totally amazing. It's a never-ending circle, but you do learn to. You'll never get over it, but you learn to go on. And by me and my wife in this organization, anything that we can do, I don't care how long it's been, you never know what you're going to hear or what somebody's going to say or what you're going to say that's going to help somebody.
I'm Noreen Malone, and I'm a Dominican Sister of Peace. And I have in the audience here 3 other sisters that are Dominican Sisters of Peace. We became that a few years ago when different congregations of women religious sisters converged and merged into, and we came up with this title, Dominican Sisters of Peace. And now we're spending all this time trying to live into that peace. But I actually represent a couple of other pieces of that peace. And they are the Spirituality Network that we founded about 30 years ago. It's not about church, it's about relationships. That makes the difference. When we come together and we have a common goal to be in relationship with one another. And the part that I've continued in my 85 years to stay with is what we call Women to Women. And that's close to my heart, and we have several sites of those groups, and I see one of our ministers down here who invite us and provide for one of our longest sites over on the west side of Columbus. They are sites of women, small groups, who need someone to listen to them, and especially not try to fix them. There's no woman that I know in this world who wants somebody else to fix us. And with that, I'll be back.
Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Eckhart, and I work for Bravo, Buckeye Region Anti-Violence Organization. And we serve all of Ohio. We started out as a Central Ohio organization, but we're now statewide. We work with survivors of hate and bias violence, domestic or intimate partner violence, sexual assault and stalking, within and on behalf of the LGBTQ or lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities of Ohio. And so I come to this work for a lot of different reasons. And so picking one story is sort of difficult to do for me. I came out as gay at 15 years old, which was a little over 25 years ago, which was a different era, although not that different. We like to think it's more different than it is. And so shortly after I shared my identity with the world, I found myself in a hospital for a couple days here in Central Ohio, surviving hate and bias violence directly. My faith community turned on me and asked me not to be a part of that. My community of origin and where I grew up was not supportive. In fact, the only thing that was in the immediate sense were my parents and my brother, and that actually saved my life many times. And so I come to this work with a lens of intersectionality and the way that we as a society have to look at oppression and violence and hurt as intersectional and not one-dimensional. And so understanding my own hurt and my own process is important also to be able to then heal through the work, is something that I'm fond of saying. So my personal story is very personal, as I'm sure all of ours are on this panel, as I'm sure all of yours are listening here today. And part of that work is sharing our stories and being vulnerable together.
My name is Kay Wilson. I have the opportunity to serve at an organization called Leader Spark. We're a nonprofit that serves young people 14 to 24, and we've been around since 1987. What brought me to this work, similar to what Aaron just mentioned a little bit ago, so I come from parents that went through seasons of either incarceration or substance abuse, and I was adopted as a small child of about 6 months old. However, being in that adoptive family, literally, I like to say the black sheep of the family, because I was adopted into a family where I was the only African American. And then later was rejected by my adopted mom by the time I think I was 16. And so for me, it was also healing through the work that I do. And I think the greatest thing that I ever thought that I could do at my purpose was to be the person that I needed when I was young. That is what I strive to do every day. And so that's what drew me to the work, and that's why I love the work that I do.
Thank you.
Hi, y'all. My name is Sarah Nerad. I'm the Associate Director of Community Relations for Alkermes, which is a pharmaceutical company, and we manufacture a drug that helps with alcohol and opioid dependence. So I have a really cool role there in that I am full-time on ending the opioid epidemic. So small task, right? And I come to this work because I'm a person in long-term recovery, which for me means that I have not used drugs or alcohol since August 16th of 2007. And it was, thank you. So it was through that experience that I recognized, you know, how fortunate I was to be able to access services right in my hometown when I needed them and have the full continuum of care. And then I had insurance to pay for it and parents that were there willing to drive me to these places and support me, you know, and bankroll a lot of that stuff, and how, you know, so many people in this country don't have that. And so it was recognizing that I decided that it was unacceptable to me that other people don't have the same opportunities to recover that I did. So that's why I'm here today.
Thank you. I'm really moved by your stories. The personal is always political, and our compassion is really what keeps us here and present. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing. I wanted to ask this question, though. What does the hurt look like in the people that you serve, and how does that hurt get healed? How do people learn how to, I mean, because you have programs and you have services, and it's not like people come in hurt and then they leave all well and wonderful. It's a process, I'm sure it is. But I was wondering if you could share, and we don't necessarily have to go in order, whoever feels ready, but what does that hurt look like in the people you serve in, and how does that hurt get healed? What's that process look like?
I can start. A sister friend of mine was the director of a social service agency in Portsmouth, Ohio. And she called me and she said, we have all the personnel we need, to get the basic services for their clients. But she said, Noreen, we don't have anyone who bring them together. They're living maybe in the same buildings, but totally isolated. And she would work to bring them together, and another sister and I would go down once a month to Portsmouth for 2 years and just bring them together. And we did this based on age and experience. In the morning, we would have the younger women who had children going to school. They were now in the class, and then we would meet with them and have lunch. The older women, those women that had been around the block in many ways, would come for lunch, and we would meet with them in the afternoon. But what they taught me, being an old school teacher, I thought I had to have a lesson plan. No, no, no. I needed them to tell their stories. So what you were saying, Fran, makes a lot of sense. But that's hard to do. That's hard to do when you've been abused sexually, verbally, whatever way. When you've been made fun of, as you mentioned. So how do we gain the trust? I think that for me is, can my compassion come through? Can our acceptance of the person, where they are, who they are, what they are, how they've been treated, can we change that in some way? Can we get beyond our expectations? They won't go out the door. But a little story. The first day that we were there to start this program, and we had spent the 100 miles kind of planning our technique. Well, that went out the window as soon as the first person arrived, because that first person came in on canes, really needed major dental work, had not the hygiene that one would hope for, and she wouldn't talk at all. But finally, she began to listen to the stories of others, and that somehow gave her the courage to tell her story. And by the end of our program, at the end of the 2 years, that particular woman actually conducted, without realizing it, the program, because she had gained a confidence in herself. She was treated with dignity. She was treated with compassion. She was the lawful wife, but not married, of a man whose wife was in a mental institution, and he had 6 children to care for. He was not about to divorce his wife, so she moved in and took care of that family. But the day that it triggered for her, we had a program that was called The Names I've Been Called. And suddenly she got this ferocious headache, and I thought, maybe she can't read. Maybe it's a reading problem. So I took her over to a couch, and I said, would you talk this through with me? And I explained what it meant, and she told me her story, that her family had abandoned her because of the lifestyle she was living. But by the end of the 2 years, once a month, every year, she listened to other people's and was treated with the dignity. And by the last time, she was very artistic, and we were using clay that day. And she built this garden and this house. And her husband was an alcoholic, and she used money while he was on a binge, bought a new trailer, had him moved in before he came to, and then she invited my partner and I to come to their trailer, and she made cornbread. It was the best cornbread I've ever eaten. But she had a sense of self that she didn't have before. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Noreen. Aaron?
So I think in thinking about, what the hurt looks like for LGBTQI communities, which is such a vast community in of itself, and culture, and so, it is that direct pain of direct hate and physical hate and bias violence, or verbal or emotional hate and bias violence, from name calling to you don't belong in this country anymore to murder. And all of that hate and bias violence, and also inter-community violence such as domestic violence, feeds a community standard or a vision that your people don't belong. And there's cultural trauma on top of the hurt. And so when I look out over the landscape nationally, I also see over 250 pieces of legislation talking about the personal as political. Over 250 individual pieces of legislation in the United States of America right now at state municipalities and cities that are anti-LGBT, saying we don't belong, we can't use the bathroom, we can't do other things, and all the while knowing that overwhelmingly the people that are facing the most the most impacted parts of our community are transgender women of color. There have been 14 transgender women of color murdered in Ohio in the last 5 years. And this is murdered for who you are, right? This is not that murder is ever okay, right? But this is somebody saying you don't belong on this earth and killing them. And so where do you go from there, right? And that's the thing, right? It's like, so the hurt is multi-level, intersectional. It's also poverty. Transgender people face 2 times the national average of unemployment. Transgender women of color face 4 times the national average of unemployment. Now let's talk about the intersection of poverty and violence. And so, also healthcare, but we don't have that kind of time. So anyway, that's another panel, right? So, so the hurt is there, right? The cultural hurt and trauma is there. So how do you move from that pain to healing? So one of the things that I think it is it's hard personal work, right? But it's also hard community work. And I like to think about this idea that I'm going to go ahead and name this. I am a social worker by trade, and I'm only saying that because I like to pick on social work. Insofar as for a few decades now we've created these quote-unquote safe spaces with these community guidelines of how to have conversations and all of that. Yeah, that's great, except that it doesn't work for everybody. We can't create a safe space for everybody, and I think that it's tended to let us believe something that's untrue. Uncomfortable is not unsafe. Uncomfortable is vulnerable. Vulnerable is necessary for growth and healing. Unsafe is never okay. And so separating those, but also with this concept of, I can sit here and say that we have a welcoming program and everybody's welcome, which is entirely true, but unless I get out there and prove it, it doesn't matter. Right? So creating a welcoming space, quote unquote, looks like myself or us being invited into other people's communities. We have to be welcomed as much as we're welcoming. Right? And when we do that hard community work and actually move into our communities and what are the needs instead of creating a program on a piece of paper with beautiful outcomes for funders, which we do that too. But we also have to talk to our communities and not just talk. We have to be vulnerable with one another, and we have to be welcomed by each other.
All right. Thank you, Erin.
For us, I would say in regards to what hurt looks like, so hurt could look like an empty stomach or a young person who is ridiculed because they have a balance of $2.40 on their lunch account and can't eat lunch, and other students are making fun of them. Hurt could look like being in New Albany and knowing that you have a problem with prescription pills and no one is around because you have 2 parents that are working and so no one is around. Pain for young people can also look like a young black boy whose biggest threat to society seems to be something that he cannot change, which is the color of his skin. It comes in all shapes and sizes. I tell people when they want to see what hurt looks like to look in the mirror, because most of us walk around with masks on anyway, because we have to, because we want to be resilient, because, you know, no one wants to be around someone who looks like they're hurting all the time. The biggest thing that I've learned, you know, the age range that we deal with, they are wired for risk. That is what they're wired to do. Teenagers are wired to take risks. Now, whether that's on the good risk side, where they want to take risks in sports or, you know, academically trying to extend themselves, or whether that's on the not so good side, where they're being challenged and ridiculed for just simply being different. And they don't have the mental capacity that comes with age to know how to deal with those things, or to do self-leadership, if you will. So the biggest challenge that we face is sometimes in regards to funding. A lot of funders want to say certain things look like certain things in certain zip codes, without realizing that it's everywhere. The pain is everywhere. The hurt is everywhere. And so just as we believe that leadership isn't dictated by zip code or by what you were born into, neither is hurt and pain. We find it in Upper Arlington, in New Albany, as well as we do on the south side, in Linden. We've got a lot of people who are hurting. And what also happens is that hurt people hurt people. And so with young people, if you don't have a good self-reflection, how you feel about yourself, you don't love you, why do so many people get shocked when I don't love my neighbor, right? And so I think I wish I could really describe what it looked like accurately, but I will just say that every week that I have an opportunity to serve young people, I am never surprised by what it looks like. And I will just share one short story. So I receive a call, this has probably been about 6 months ago. I receive a call from Josh in New Albany. And Josh calls, Miss K, I'm at a Lazarus party, I need your help. Okay, Lazarus closed a long time ago, so maybe, are you at a Macy's party? You know, he's like, I need you to pay attention. I said, okay, well, Miss K, so I'm here with 4 of my friends, and I'm the one in charge of the Narcan to bring them back to life when they try to overdose. So Lazarus being the biblical connotation to bring them back to life. And so, of course, I'm talking to this young man to describe to him all the things that could go wrong with this. And I'm also on the phone with the fire department at the same time. And, you know, I get to New Albany, and I'm harassed by police. Because what am I doing in that neighborhood at almost 3 o'clock in the morning? And so that doesn't, I might be dealing with a weed problem on the south side, but I'm dealing with other problems in the suburbs. So it doesn't always look like we expect it. And I think the best is, again, trying to be an example of and vulnerable to say that you know you're not alone in it. And that's the work I think that we all do every day.
Thank you, Kay.
For me, it's what does hurt look like? Totally indescribable. So if you can, well, I won't even say that, but somebody knocks on your door and says that your son, your daughter, your mother, father, brother, sister was just murdered. There's no way to describe the look on people's faces. Uh, Sister said it, there's one lady in our group that her mother, her son was murdered, her mother came, her aunt came. Finally, she came in the door, and you could tell the look on her face, one that lost her son. She did not want to be there. Period, plain and simple. But as she heard the group open up, as Sister Noreen said, she came a long way, a long way. Very few meetings that she ever misses. We have a meeting once a month. But it's just, do not let your mind wonder what if it happens to you. Because it'll drive you crazy. Absolutely insane. I was the typical male that didn't need the help, this, that, and everything else. Well, and the old saying that men don't cry, that's just a flat out stinking lie. Everybody grieves differently, and this lady said down here that hurt people hurt other people. And maybe that's the reason there is so many murders. I don't know. I don't think nobody does know. I believe we're up to 80 this year so far, which we're well on the way to set a record. A few years ago, our nation's capital had set the record for the most murders. Chicago is definitely totally off the hook. Cincinnati, even a little town Springfield, Ohio. It doesn't matter. Just like one lady said, New Albany, Bexley. Yes, the ghetto. But it happens everywhere. I know of a case over in Indianapolis. Man was a preacher. They broke into his house. He went to the gym. Drug his wife outside who was pregnant. Killed her. How do you describe that? You can't. But by coming to the meetings every month, and you would be amazed to realize, and it happens without realizing it until time passes, the friendships that evolves around this. It's totally amazing. As Sister Rosemary, she's adopted us, and we've kind of adopted her. But the true friendships that's come out of this, because we're the only ones that in that room that knows what it's actually like. And yes, there is so much other wrong in this country. So much prejudice against this, that, and everything else. It doesn't make any difference. And to give you kind of an example about prejudice, I'm not a Ohio State fan. I'm a Michigan fan. So, you know, I go blue. But but I say that jokingly, but my wife's got a flag out front that says house divided. But laughter, no matter what the situation, laughter is one of the biggest medicines and healers that we have. It takes time, a lot of time. And just like everybody else has said, to accept yourself. I may not agree with something, but that does not give me the right to kill somebody, make fun of them, or anything else. And where did we lose this? When each one of us went to school, all this stuff it was going on, but not near like it is today. And this is what has to stop, somehow, some way.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you.
So I think a lot of us are familiar with what the hurt looks like with regards to alcohol and other drug addiction. I know for me, I can't open up Facebook without seeing a bunch of news stories about it, and I feel like I've just been inundated with information on it. I think the hurt, is both at the individual level, but also with the family and friends. For those of us that have a loved one or someone that we know that struggles with this, not only does the hurt kind of ripple out, but I also want to say the hope ripples out as well. But when I think about, addiction, it's a lot of hopelessness, despair, shame, regret, fear, powerlessness, Sometimes it's easier to spot than other times. Some people seem to fly under the radar, for a long time, and all of a sudden you're like, what? I had no idea that they were struggling. Other people, it's just much more obvious, the consequences they start to experience happen a lot quicker. They're more visible. And with all of this, it has just spread into every sector of our society, from our schools to our employers to the criminal justice system, healthcare, child welfare. Everyone is feeling this hurt, of addiction in our society. No matter what, the addiction is too. We're feeling this everywhere. So hopefully we can talk about hope soon, because that's what I like the most.
So before I ask the next thing, I wonder if we could just take a breath, if you don't mind, just a deep breath. I think a lot of what the panel shared, it feels heavy to me. And I just think sometimes taking a breath kind of helps a little. You all talked about trust, acceptance. When you're talking about what does the hurt look like and how does that hurt get healed, you talked about people being treated with dignity, that it's important that we tell our story, and that laughter is important, that we understand the cultural trauma that's also going on with what people are dealing with, and then recognizing that hurt doesn't always look like the way we expect it to look. So with that, and the fact that I think from time to time, based on what we're experiencing, we're all wired for different kind of risk-taking. What are some of the tools that you use in your programs to help people learn how to heal their hurt? So just wondering if you could share some of the actual tools or skills that you work to develop in people.
Basically, just let people talk. Let them tell their story. And we are a grief sharing organization. I like to call it also a venting organization, because you do vent. Because when it happens, you are mad at the whole world. You're just so devastated. You're mad at God. You're mad at your family. You're mad at your loved one who's gone. So you need to vent, but it's just grief sharing. And as far as murder goes, and maybe even some of the alcoholism and the drug addiction, I've had my little bout with alcohol, nothing like some of you've had, but it's just amazing. It's I don't know, but you have to be able to talk about it. And like that one lady said, accept yourself. And the more you talk about it, the more you look yourself in the mirror, to me personally, I think it's the better off you're going to be.
In our organization, we try to build into it the whole idea of compassion for ourselves. And that seems so foreign, especially to people who are churchgoers. We don't hear that in church. And I've asked Rosie and Reverend Renee Walmart Keels, who's the new director of the Spirituality Network, and Barb Kane, where are you, Barb? One of our Dominican sisters, and she's a director of our Dominican learning centers throughout the. And there's a little card, and I'd like for you to keep it. But on one side, you want to just distribute those for us, please? This is a little prayer kind of thing, or a reminder that peace begins within each of us. It is a process of repeatedly showing mercy to ourselves, forgiving ourselves, befriending ourselves, accepting ourselves. As we learn to appreciate ourselves and accept God's gift of peace, we begin then to radiate that peace and love to others. That's a quote from a very famous Jesuit priest, John Deere. And what I am learning is about compassion fatigue. And I was very interested in what my partner over here said about social workers. I admire social workers so much, but they are so overbooked and overwhelmed. They cannot stay with all of the people that they're given to be with. Our job at Women to Women or Spirituality Network is we want to stay with people indefinitely. We want to hear them personally. When the AIDS epidemic was so strong, we had retreats for AIDS patients. We got in trouble with people, big trouble, because we did that. But we stood our ground, because unless we can find ways to be compassionate, even to ourselves, and basically to ourselves. So those of us who are Christian, I always use this Jesus time, when the Pharisees wanted to catch Jesus in a bind, and well, what's the greatest commandment out of all the 630 rules? And Jesus wrapped it all up in to love God totally, to love your neighbor as yourself. To me, that is the cornerstone. If we don't really take care of ourselves and offer forgiveness and compassion to ourselves, we are going to suffer from compassion fatigue. And it is the hardest thing we can do. So.
There are many tools that are used, daily. Something that I've used across my, for a long time, since I came in contact with it. A lot of my study, when I was studying, was self-care, compassion fatigue, trauma stewardship, it's now called. But really kind of looking inward too, like using, through counseling, through other tools and methods, but also looking at your environment, right? It's got to be about people and environment, or in environment, right? Mm-hmm. And so one of the tools that we use a lot is a self-care plan. I know it's not a slide on the screen, but so it breaks things down, or it separates things for folks into mind, body, and spirit, and then supportive people in my life and what I want to accomplish, right? And so when we're in crisis, these are harder to come up with. And so when someone is over or moving through a crisis or not in an acute crisis, and I always recommend that everybody do these, you kind of list out things in different ways about what helps your mind settle, what helps your body feel good, what helps your spirit feel good, what fuels you, what you want to accomplish. And those can be long-term goals like peace or serenity, or I want to do the dishes, right? I want to take the garbage out 2 times this week instead of just one. Like, it can be small goals, long goals, right? And then supportive people, because I think one of the hardest things to do when we're in crisis or experiencing trauma is to just pause for a second and go, you know what, if I call Ezra, good friend of mine, if I call Ezra, I'm going to be okay in this moment. But in the moment, I'm like, I don't know what to do and I can't see anything. I can pull this out and go, oh, I already know. And so I also have blank copies, a few that I'll put on the back table, but this actually comes from a place that you can find on the internet called Social Work Tech, T-E-C-H, socialworktech.com. There's lots of different tools and stuff around self-care there, but that's one of the tools that we use.
Thanks, Sarah.
For us, we use a sequence curriculum, and I think one of the things that is a particular tool is a single-page plan for your life. And so we look at having the young people develop their personal mission statement, which will kind of help guide them on what it is that they want to do, and also articulating the values and characters that they feel that they already have. Also, we teach self-leadership and self-responsibility. So we always inform young people that you cannot control every situation, but you can control your response to the situation. And so a lot of times, I'll just use this personally, I have people who will ask me if I'm going through my own situation, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And majority of the time, I would say yes, because very, very early on, I learned that whatever the situation, if I stop and say, I'm responsible, it doesn't mean that I'm responsible for the pain if someone was murdered, or that those circumstances that happen that are not of our control, a hurricane. But I am responsible for how I respond in this situation. And that kind of elevates, because a lot of times you cannot be, you cannot emotionally polarize yourself. You can't be like happy and sad at the same time. Now we'll ask young people, how are you feeling? And we'll get nothing, or we've even heard that, I feel nothing. And when we say, okay, well, we're going to start with, I'm responsible, because I can own my stuff. I can't own anybody else's stuff, but I can own mine. And we start there. We always go through the curriculum depending on, again, if it's a crisis situation. And also letting people know, in this moment, whatever you're going through, I just need you to know I care. Sometimes just saying that to people, to Aaron's point, you don't always know in this situation, but just letting them know I care, and listening, and also letting them know I hear you. I hear you, I can't fix it, but I do hear you. Sometimes just saying those few things can ultimately change a situation, because at least the person knows this is not in vain, and I can first accept my feelings, the space that I'm in, and now I can try to do the work. And also purposeful action. When you don't want to get up, when you've had something happen to you where you just want to bury yourself in the bed and throw the covers over your head, getting up and opening the curtains is a big step. So purposeful action, asking them, okay, so now in this moment, what purposeful action can you take? And it doesn't look the same to a lot of people. And sometimes, opening those curtains are fine. Sometimes calling somebody just to say, I forgive you, is fine. So those are the tools that we use.
Thank you.
Yeah, so first thing I want to say is that people can and do recover. There's lots of us out there. And I think in order for us to do that, we need to have patient-centered care, right? This idea that there's no wrong door. No matter where someone shows up to access help for their addiction, we're able to link them up with what they need. And that care is patient-centered. They're presented with all of the options that are out there for them, and that they have some say in the treatment that they get. And with all of that, we need ongoing recovery management, because we tend to treat addiction like an acute problem, right? You get 28 days, good luck. We used to have a graduation, we give you a coin, right? But like, what other chronic healthcare conditions do we give 28 days of care for and a coin? We don't. It's hard to make these lifestyle, these behavior changes to lower our blood pressure, manage our weight, get our cholesterol down. Like, these things are hard, right? I'm sure a lot of us in here have, experienced some of this, right? Because we like our full-fat dairy products and we like to not exercise. Addiction is just another one of these chronic healthcare conditions. It's going to require ongoing recovery management for a lifetime. So we need to treat it that way. Our community is actually doing a lot of really great stuff. We've got our Franklin County Opiate Action Team, and so there's been an infusion of some funds from the federal CARA and then the CARES Act. So we're seeing more treatment centers opening up in our community, both that accept Medicaid, Medicare, and private insurance, which is awesome. More recovery houses. We've got Narcan that's being available, doing stuff. We have a lot of drug courts here, which are fantastic. So there's a lot of solutions that are starting to come, and then we're beginning to fund more of the ones that work and have some evidence and efficacy behind them. So I think what works, for people in recovery is to have, these recovery community organizations to get that peer-to-peer support. One person in recovery helping someone else that's kind of going through that. So you can look up. We have a ton of recovery support meetings in the area. Ohio is actually the birthplace of Alcoholics Anonymous, so we are rich in resources, both 12-step based as well as faith-based, ones that are not faith-based at all, ones that involve peers, medications. There's a lot of resources out there. The ADAM board, the Alcohol, Drug, Mental Health Board here at Franklin County, if you go to their website, you can pull up all of their resources that are in their network. So that's a great place to start.
Thank you. I was going to ask you a question, like what can friends or family members, or what can the community do to learn how to heal the hurt of a loved one or somebody that they care about? But you kind of answered that. You said it's important to surround yourself with supportive people or a go-to person, somebody that you can identify and say, this is my go-to person. You said that sometimes just saying, I care, can help. Listening. We all talked about listening. Or actually saying, which someone said to me, which was exactly what I needed, was, I hear you, Fran. I actually hear you. Or I can't fix it, but I'm present for you. Or asking questions in which you are asking somebody, what is a purposeful action you can do right now? Like, sometimes that purposeful action really is just letting the sun in. That's about as much as I can do today, but it's a good thing. So I want to give our audience an opportunity to ask questions, not make statements, ask questions. But before we do that, I was just wondering if there's one other thing that you could add to what a friend or a family member or our community can do to help a loved one begin to heal. Just one offering.
Always be there for them. We have a lot of problems with excuse me, family members 6-8 months, a year down the road. Well, nobody really understands, but they think the person that lost a loved one for murder, they should be over it by now. A lot of families is broken up because of this. Be there and listening. You go to work. If you work in an office, if you're having a bad day, tell somebody. If you're a recovering alcoholic, drug addict, and, I'll confess, I'm a nicotine addict. Tell somebody you want a drug, you want something. Let them hold your hand. Ask for help. But as family members, just be there and be supportive. If they don't want to talk, don't bug them. But if they do, Let them talk.
Thanks, Bob.
I think one thing I would like to add is that I think that we all in society can really kind of do a little bit better job of not being sympathetic. Sympathy is born from pity. I feel sorry for. That's not really ever helpful, but we're taught to have sympathy. What we should be striving for is empathy. And this is kind of separating sympathy and empathy for a moment. Empathy is more of the, I care, I'm here, I listen. It requires us to connect within ourselves something that can relate to the feeling that's being displayed. It's not the same because we don't have the same story, the same culture, the same history, the same thing. But we have to connect somewhere within ourselves that has some understanding of what this person's going through and what they're expressing, and then connect. Empathy requires connection. Sympathy drives disconnection, right? And so some of the most powerful words I've ever used or ever heard were, I don't even know what to say, but I'm so glad you told me. And just sit, right? Think about this the next time you turn on the news and you see a protest. What's your first thought? What's your first reaction? They shouldn't be doing that. They're causing a scene, not the right time. That's not empathy. Protest is born from pain and from suffering. What is going on in that community that I can connect with in my own body, in my own head, and offer support? I don't have to know the right thing to say, but I'm glad they told me. I'm glad I know how to react, right? The next time Black Lives Matter is on TV, the next time you see a protest at a pride parade, the next time you see a group of people saying, this other group of people isn't treating us right, don't turn off the television. Learn more. And that is, I think, what we can do as a society.
Thank you, Erin. Anybody else?
So my grandmother, her and my grandfather were married for about 56 years. And I used to ask her, what is the secret? Mm-hmm. And so she very honestly told me, there are times when I want to kill him, and there are times that he wants to kill me. The magic is that we never want to kill each other at the same time. And so knowing that we all go through cycles and seasons of our own hurt, and we are like ATMs. If there's nothing that is being deposited, you cannot make a withdrawal. Sometimes when you're not hurting, or when you feel, this is a good day, that's the time when you need to consciously find someone who you believe is hurting. And this could be somebody that you know, or somebody that you don't know, and have a lunch. And I mean that with all sincerity. Ask somebody just to eat lunch. And you don't have to talk. You can just be sitting there idly looking at each other and chewing food. But the fact that when you have it in you, you can give it to somebody else, hopefully we do more of that so people will continue to pay it forward without explanation, without worrying about, am I going to get it back? Because you have no idea what that paying it forward can do and how it will meet you when you least expect it, when you're at your bottom, that at least you have something to draw from.
Thank you. Yeah. We've got time for a few questions before I have to do a little closing and ask just one more thing from our panelists. But if you have a question, we'd love for you to come up. Really? Oh, okay. Do you want to come up? Can you come up front?
My name is Ronald Kowalski, and the question is, maybe it's not a question, but it is to me. Everybody's got a purpose, and everybody's got a moral, but the problem is, George Washington, when he was there first, supposedly had all these pilgrims have had children. You don't bring that up when you talk to your children because you say, be careful at school. You're not allowed to go to school. So I say the question is, where are you coming from being an adult? I've got 2 children, a couple grandchildren, but we all were reared differently. That's a bad word maybe. But the cowboy saying, I'm a hillbilly, but I'm not a hillbilly. But I don't like the category that America puts us in. And I talked to, I'm proud because the Del Plan didn't show me. I talked to Mr. Obama because he was on TV, and I did not hear him say that, according to, now that he's gone, he allowed the Cubans, because they have a territorial right, so they can come here for 7 years. Well, I've been doing this public charity for 8 years, but nobody likes public because they say you're deranged, and why would you do something to step on somebody's feet? And my question again is, why not? Yeah, that's all I got to say. You're not. I mean, everybody here has purpose, but there's not enough people that do the real purpose. The man said he was, well, what is? I heard homeless, whatever word was. If you're happy, be happy, because you can't please the whole world. And if somebody doesn't like what you say, like I said, you may not like what I'm saying, but I don't care, because I want to die happy.
Thank you.
That's enough. That's not a question or an answer. I don't know. All you can say is get out of my life, and there's another person who might say hello. And I truly believe that.
So, right. So maybe the real question is for all of us. How do you find your purpose? How do you live out your purpose? Regardless of what other people may say. Because sometimes that purpose doesn't look like what people might expect from you. But it's your calling. And so how do you make that real? 8 years of giving, 20 years of giving, 2 days of giving. If it's what you are about, then it's all good. So I really thank you for that. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. You can come up here. Yeah, you can come up here. Yeah.
I'm by the way from Cincinnati. And I love the Buckeyes. I like you. I just think this is so amazing. Look at community of beautiful people. I mean, I'm blessed to be here. I mean, thank you for this day. And I think I remember when I couldn't even spell a word at 19. Never been in kindergarten until I was 19 when I watched Sesame Street to learn how to count 1 to 10 and do my ABCs. When you talk about pain, it's all different from different people, especially if you're not from this country. It only gives me such honor to be able to be here and hear the panel of people here with all different experiences. But I can tell you this, 2 things I've learned in life is that when you get into trouble, it's not the most important, it's that you get out. The moment you realize you're in trouble. And also that I believe that God have put all of us here. And thank you, sister, for saying our Lord Jesus Christ is the powerhouse beyond anything, beyond addiction. If I tell you why I'm standing here today, it's a miracle. I was blind when I was 7. I was given 6 months to live when I was 19. I was paralyzed from the neck down in 1994. And the list goes on.
Thank you. Thank you.
But, so anyways, God bless all of you. It's an honor.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Okay.
I can speak loudly.
Okay.
I don't need to come up there.
All right.
But good afternoon. I just had a question. So I have the privilege of working with young people and families
You really do need the mic, because otherwise we won't be able to record it. Yeah, it's not just for you, but it's also, right, it's also for our listening audience as well.
My question is, how do we empower sort of these families that have caused the pain and hurt for our young people? Thank you.
So that's a huge, huge question to be able to answer. You know, a lot of times, you know, Ms. Fran mentioned, how many of you guys know what your purpose is? Okay. So I'm 47, and I'm still looking. And I often tell young people, if you want to know your purpose, look at your pain. I believe God doesn't make mistakes, and I look at everything, pain and praise, as that. He puts things in your path for your purpose, because that's uniquely to you. That's why we don't all have the same stories. And sometimes with our young people, getting them away from their family is the hardest and the toughest thing for them to do, and also for them to understand that it doesn't mean forever, but teaching them and talking to them about self-care, to understand that it's not saying you don't love someone, by understanding that you have to set up structures for your good. And sometimes those structures are, okay, we're going to look at what the picture is, and we're going to look at how we can navigate those structures for that. So sometimes they can't get out of the house, but again, limiting the time for them to also understand they have to feed themselves to be the best for those people who are hurting them. And with our kids also, they don't always take time. You know, you ask kids from school, how was your day? Fine. You know, I used to want to just shake mine, like, really? To ask the parents or whoever is causing the hurt, why? Because they themselves might be hurting, and articulating that and understanding that they also have a responsibility, sometimes that means they have to face it themselves. And so having the young people understand that they do have a voice and they can advocate for their own self-care. There are huge referrals and resources out there. I know there are plenty in the back, that when they know that they do matter, and they know that people do care, you can try to help them develop those structures that are going to help them excel. So then later on, they can be able to help those people who are even the ones that are hurting them. And I almost promise you, from myself to other young people that I've seen and work with, it is always, that is their biggest purpose. Those people who are hurting and with a family situation, I can say, I was taken from my biological family, but I was also hurt from my adoptive family. And to know that I could be hurt twice, you know, seemed like some type of cloud was following me all the time. But that is what gives me the strength every day. And those young people will be able to help other hurting young people, because God gives them that story to be just their own, because he knows what he's equipping them for.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you. Yes, I'm going to ask this lady, since she hasn't said anything yet. Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jeanette Hayes, and today I walk without my cane for about a year. Oh, well, let me start all over. A year ago, I was in a car accident, and it caused me to have some kind of problems with my left side, and it turned to be TIA. I was in a nursing home for 3 months, lost my home, but God blessed me with another. And my program is called Youth Rise Against All Odds, and I commend every last one of you. Ms. Kate, when you said you were adopted, my mother was killed in a riot in 1976. I'm adopted as well, in a loving family. So now I have 15 brothers and sisters. Okay? So yesterday, God blessed me with a doctor, and I've been seeing doctors off and on for 2 years about my legs ever since I had this accident. And all of them say, okay, well, you got this, you got that, and sticking needles in my knee and nothing worked. So God sent me yesterday to a doctor. And thank God he did, because he had the same thing that I was going through. I went to the emergency room last week, and they said, oh, you got an infection in your leg. I said, well, there's no bump. There's no cyst. There's nothing. So I get this infection. But my legs was burning so bad, and I walk with a limp. So yesterday when I went to see this doctor, he stuck a needle in my ankle. He said, it's going to make your leg and your feet feel real better. So he said, I'm going to take an x-ray and see exactly what, but I know what it is. So after the x-ray, he came back in my room. He said, oh, your Achilles is acting up on you. But that pain, the medicine I'm going to give you right now is going to prove it. And it did. So today I don't walk with my cane. Okay, so I know that it works. And that's the hurt that I was going through. But I'm going to direct this to Miss Kate. Miss Kate, Youth Rise Against All Odds is an education program. And 20 years, because of my disability, I work out of my home. And I've been trying to project it to where I can get to the next platform, not just a level, a platform so I can help raise these kids and give them some tools to teach them how to be productive in their community. So my question is to you, how do you get the people involved, and how do you get the kids involved in your community when you're pouring out your heart and you're sending out invitations and you're letting them know that you're doing this and you have a meeting over here to come? How did you get to your platform?
I think everybody here can answer that question, because if you do it for the platform, it's not going to happen. If you do it and know that you're doing it because it's somebody that you're purposed to do it for, I'm sure when Bob started, he had his reasons, and things grew from there. I know Sister Noreen, if you have that vision and that purpose, that's what's going to draw the people. I actually, in seeing Aaron here with Bravo, I actually think that in Central Ohio, we live in a great city where people have the opportunity to collaborate, but we don't always collaborate. Mm-hmm. And so I'm also, and I'm in nonprofit. I'm over nonprofitized. I have a lot of friends who, will come and say, "Kay, I'd like to start a nonprofit," and the first thing I say is, "Why?" Mm-hmm. Because there are so many incredible people out here that are doing the work that you will probably be so much more valuable within somebody's organization, because there's so much of it out here. So the only thing that I can really suggest is to keep on. Your heart is going to draw people into you, especially working with youth, because they don't control their own transportation all the time. They're so finicky, but if you keep it in your heart, you're going to draw the people that you need.
All right, so thank you. So we have a few minutes left, and I've got a couple other questions that I would like to ask, so that Gail will make sure that I've done exactly what I'm supposed to do. One more. Okay. Question?
I'd just like to address the platform question.
Question, please.
I was born and raised here. I went through everything you could think of. We are the Remnant House Living. The Remnant House Living is faith-based. That was one of the hardest challenges. And Miss Sherry Chaney gave a seminar at OSU, and she says, "Natalie, if you're going to do it faith-based, just stick with it. Eventually it will happen." Well, that's 5 years later, building, studying, going to Bible college, so on and so on. I have lived my life consecrated for that vision. And so when the lady said, do you need a platform? If you do it for the platform, you absolutely will not make it. I had to leave this city, go out and form a platform, grow a platform of people from all over the world to be able to do this. And we're still not off the ground strong. So again, that question would be is how do we get our people involved? Napoleon jumped in to help us. We had a big event talking about social violence, and people still didn't come. We brought people from other regions to help with that initiative, and people still didn't come. Everything was free, and they still didn't come. We're faced with this every single day. And I'm using my own personal money to get it done. No funding, not anything, but we still keep doing it. We still gave when we walked in the door. What do we do about this? What do we do to unsensitize everybody so they do have empathy for what we do?
One of the things that I'm really hearing from the last two questions is that the business of healing hurting people is a great challenge. And the desire and the energy are good, but there's structure to this whole process of how do you heal hurting people, how do you provide services that will help to heal hurting people. And truthfully, I think that that's a workshop, it's a weekend learning. But I also think it's what these Lunch and Learn series do, and that is provide resources, faces, names. There's lots of literature in the back. The hope is that you will run over to these panelists, get their cards, go to lunch, go to breakfast, get some ideas, because I think our community here in Columbus and in Franklin County is really resource rich, but there are all kinds of gaps still because there are so many different kinds of hurts that require healing. And not one group can take care of everybody. So I am really grateful of the questions that came up last about looking for opportunities and ways to even provide more healing. So I really appreciate that. So I just wanted to ask two things. One of the things that I do know is that there is a lot of literature out there, but have you read anything that really informs the work that you do, that our audience could benefit from literature that you know about? And, okay, so, and then why did you choose that book? Noreen?
I brought this. I'm into marketing. This book is called Dignity, and it's by the author Donna Hicks. And she has written this book as a result of the work that she's done to bring, whether it was the Irish and English feuds together, the Union of South Africa, Archbishop Tutu wrote the foreword in this, but it's written in such a way that we understand another way to live in our world. Dignity is different from respect. Dignity is when we leave a conversation and my sense of self is enriched or at least intact. Respect doesn't get us there, but dignity, remembering our own dignity and treating the other person with dignity makes all the difference in the world. It's a very readable book, very readable. The other thing, if I may, one of the things that has helped me stay in this kind of work for all those 30 years was the result of a scientific research, because stress is such a common word, and we all know what stress is and how it affects our lives. And this story is a true story, and it comes out of a scientific lab in California. There was an earlier research study that used mostly males, and I'm so glad that these two gentlemen are here. And the result of that test said that when we're under stress, everybody turns either to fight or flight. Well, there were 4 women working in this scientific lab, and they were reviewing that study. And they said, that's not what we do when we're stressed. And so they sat down, put on a fresh pot of coffee, and said, what do we do when we're stressed? And they said, well, we clean the lab, and then we make the coffee, and then we talk about it. And this, you reminded me of it, because if we are being treated as though stress allows us to be violent, we need, all of us at whatever age, to realize that stress is connected with our hormones. When a woman is ready to give birth, the hormone that she needs kicks in so that she can bear the pain to give birth. It also allows her to handle stress differently. We don't know that. This study needs to be advertised. For men, men have been so socialized that you are supposed to be strong and have the answers and make it happen, rather than finding another way to do it by connecting. That's what you two gentlemen have done. You've reminded me that we all can connect with people. So it's building communities, it's building relationships. It's not trying to do it by ourselves and not feeling that we have to do it for somebody else, but that each one has something to bring. Those 2 things have helped me more than anything. So thank you.
Thank you very much. This Lunch and Learn series is made possible through the Department of Neighborhoods and the Friends of Community Relations. Chair Sid Gross is with us today, so thank you very much. The Director of the Department of Neighborhoods, Carla Williams Scott, was here. She just left, I think. Chair Mary Howard is here from the Commission, so we thank you very much. So I leave you with this. As soon as healing takes place, Maya Angelou said, go out and heal somebody else. Thank you.